And mapping the manifesto is essentially deconstructing these manifestos that far-right terrorists and attackers leave online, in some ways justifying in their minds their action, explaining their ideology. And more recently, we've noticed trends that the attackers use the manifesto where they really focus on the aesthetics of the attack, almost as a how-to guide for those that they hope will follow after them.
Do they have a lot of people who follow their guidelines?
They have many people. So these individuals, almost as an academic would cite other scholarship, these individuals cite prior attacks and attackers, Brenton Tarrant, Anders Breivik. They inspire one another, they build off of one another, and in many ways, in some cases, they essentially plagiarize from one another, copying large chunks of previous texts as a way to kind of explain their worldview.
Is it the vast majority that leave these manifestos, or is it a small group?
Well, you'd have to really kind of break down the data. We know from some of the most high-profile attacks, those typically will have a manifesto. Buffalo, Jacksonville, some of the other attacks that we've seen. And again, some of these can be quite lengthy. Some of them can contain big chunks of disinformation, and others can contain, really, really detailed tactics, techniques, and procedures on how to construct your own attack. So dangerous that these are out there living on the web, almost as a kind of guide for other terrorists.
So given the First Amendment, how do you approach the problem? How do you attack the problem?
I mean, that's why we're at a place like Eradicate Hate, meeting with tech companies, discussing these issues, because this is a real public policy dilemma. We do have the First Amendment, we do have free speech. At the same time, we wouldn't let a jihadist post something like this online. So there's a bit of a double standard, I think, and that's something that scholars have long debated about.
What comes back at you from the social media platforms?
Well, I think, these platforms, whether it's Facebook, Meta, or whatever you want to call it, X, formerly Twitter, it really doesn't behoove them to have this online, except I think they're a little bit behind the curve when it comes to content moderation. And really, when these things are out there in the wild, so to speak, it's very difficult to pull them off. Researchers, of course, like myself, need them. We read them, we study them, we kind of break them apart. But others share them, they create memes from them, and they use them to not only recruit new members into the organization, the kind of worldwide hate movement, but they also use these to radicalize others.
Colin, I don't understand the why. Why do these people who perpetrate these sort of attacks, why do they do these manifestos? Is it ego gratification? What is it?
I think it is a bit to do about ego. It's a way to be remembered. They see themselves as martyrs. This is them leaving their legacy or their stamp. And they're very, macabre and very kind of morbid when you look at they're referencing prior attacks, talking about the numbers of people killed, the body count, right? They almost grade each other on a curve of how many people were killed, how bloody the attack was, how much coverage it garnered.
When you're dealing with something like this, where you're basically dealing with a communications issue, is it a case where you find yourselves playing whack-a-mole, where you'll get one platform that say, we're not going to allow this, and they'll migrate to a different platform?
Yeah, it is essentially whack-a-mole. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true in this case. And, there's this big debate over, do we let these things kind of live out there in the open and monitor who's looking at them, who's accessing them, or do we push them off into the dark corners of the web where they're not really out there for the mainstream? And so there's a bit of a kind of cost-benefit analysis that goes into this.
Aside and apart from approaching the platforms and saying, look, you guys don't want this on your site, what more can you do, if anything?
Well, again, that's what we have working groups convened here to talk about. We've been in discussions about making a media guide. In fact, how do we approach media organizations on how they should cover these, on how they should handle manifestos if they're delivered to them? Should they cite an attacker by name, or should they not? Right, and so those are the things that we're working through with various experts in the field.
And I'm only guessing, that legacy media, news organizations, qualitative journalism organizations are more receptive to you than a platform maybe. Is that right or incorrect?
100%. I think they really want to do the right thing. They want to learn, and they want to cover the issue in a really thoughtful and nuanced way that it deserves.
Great. Colin, thank you for talking to us.